So one of the things I come up across often with the book or the control catalog is that a lot of people think it is kind of theory or just general ideas on how I think I would solve for particular things. And even in the book, I definitely define that it's based on live lived case studies, right? Things that actually happened, and the controls were built around that in a way to share my failures so others could learn from. So let's talk about one of those. So I'm going to give the story behind why that particular um, control exists. So let's go ahead and pull it up here in the book. Uh, where are we at? Chapter one. There you go. No, it's not chapter four. Um, Here we are. Chapter four, where it says identity is infrastructure and identity and session integrity. So this control and the story behind it is basically while I was building a particular project. And the project's a learning system, so I'll give you a little context there. So it's a learning system, and part of the learning system has is a model. It's kind of an AI assisted system, and there's a model that does some reasoning, and there is RAG ingestion with semantic search, that type of RAG, and there is um, like a lesson planner and a graph in there for that in general to help structure the lessons that the AI provides the end user, right? And so it's more than that, but generally at a very high level, that's kind of what the system does, right? The model uses the lesson planner and the graph to then help generate a lesson from data in the RAG, then it's served to the user. In general, that's what happens, right? And so I built the system, the core, and it works, right? And what was happening is at a particular point when I was working on the UI and I was trying to fine tune the output that the user was receiving. And I was often coming into issues where it either wasn't loading, or there was giving me an error message, or it would be too long, or it wouldn't sound correct, it would sound fragmented, or whatever reason. And I had errors into the system, right? So you would get an error, right? But that didn't help, right? Even if it looks like a timeout error. Yes, it timed out. That's true. But why? It was a black box. I didn't know why. I couldn't surface the data to tell me what was happening. And so what happened was the first thing that happened was I started to collect more data. I built an observability stack or tool inside of the application, and I started populating that with more data, which was good. I was now able to see a little bit more, but not enough. I had records and events, but those events and records were just isolated in events and records. So I can look through and try to piece together things through maybe like proximity and time. Like, oh, these all happened within this particular time, so they must be related, right? But it's still hard to kind of gauge, what happens when, where, what actually is still going on because there's isolated incidents, they're not in order, still confusing, right? So what had ended up happening is the next thing. I needed to determine more so what was happening. So I attached identity, and that is who executed the current um, current flow or current data flow. User starts up, goes starts a lesson, and the first step loads. So in the logs, it would say that user's account name, and it would track all of the steps in there, and it would attach to the user. The second thing I did, because each each new step would be its own sequence in the system that follows a path, I added a trace ID. So now each flow had one identifiable characteristic and the user. And so because of that, now I was able to see the entire path of that event. So that structure, that flow. So when a user started a particular task inside their lesson, I was able to see the requests, what the models do, how long retrieval happened, how many tokens per second were happening, um, the time to first token, how long it took to actually generate the information and send it back, any type of retries, failures, what the raw input was from the RAG, what the execution output was, or the scores. I was tracking. I said, because I've already pulled all this extra data, now it's all a very coherent story. And what that allowed me to do is it allowed me to see what was actually happening. I was able to identify why things were timing out. I was able to identify why things did look coherent because I had the data. I knew that hey, my RAG retrieval was taking you know seven it was 700 tokens, and my max throughput in my model was 50 tokens per second. So okay, that's slow, right? If you do the math, that's a lot. That's for a model for a small piece of information, that's a lot. And then you have to also add in time to first token and how long it takes to execute. And those things compound. So it was slow and it timed out because the system was meant to time out. So it doesn't sit there forever. No one wants a system that's, you know, that you're learning from has to be kind of responsive in a way, right? The whole stopping for a minute or two between very short steps is very immersion breaking. So that had to be fixed. But that one control led to me adjusting my chunking strategy, and allowed me to dial in what I was sending to the user. Instead of guessing, instead of trying different things, I knew exactly where the issues were, and I was able to focus on those and resolve them. So I was no longer blind, and then I could see. And that's why this control is in this book. This is very, very important with models because they're such black boxes, is that you build yourself a pair of eyes so you can see. So I'm probably going to do a few more of these videos or one for each control at some point. So I just wanted to go over why and how this control came to exist and why I built it. Um, so you can understand that these controls are not just theory. They were because I had issues and failures, and these were the solutions that came out of those failures and those pain points. Right. Thank you guys for listening and watching. You guys have a great day. Bye bye.